right, everyone, thanks for listening. This is Metal Asylum. This is Jack Mangan from MetalAsylum.net. Here's another interview with a band that's been around for a number of years, has done many, many cool things, a band called Conquest. And we're talking actually to one of the founding members and the guy who's still carrying the torch. We're talking to Derrick Brumley. Derrick, thank you so much for joining us today. And, welcome.
Awesome, man. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. Well, so now 2024 has been an exciting year for you and the band. I mean, I'll kind of let you get right into it if you don't mind. Tell us a little bit about Paradox and some of the shows you've done, really everything you've got going on this year.
So, yeah, you're right. It's been a kind of a long road to get here, but here we are. Record came out back in actually, it was two release dates. There was a little Midwest release date because we did like an in-store thing and all that. But we did that April 14th, I think it was. And then on May 10th, it came out worldwide everywhere. Downloads, vinyl, CD, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. So go get a copy of that. It's available everywhere where music is sold.
That's right. And on streaming platforms, too. I mean, it's 2024. We got to acknowledge streaming, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's on all the platforms, your Spotify, your Amazon, everywhere. So,
nice.
Yeah, go check it out. Definitely. You're right. In today's climate, that's as actually more important than the hard copies. But us old school guys like you guys to buy the CD or the vinyl.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I mean, you and I think are of an age where there's a year we've been looking for the tapes, right? We've been looking for the cassette tapes.
Yeah, well, without a doubt.
Well, no, I mean, you actually said something that I've got a bunch of questions kind of lined up, but I want to jump ahead to one of them because you talked about. I've seen it, and you guys have talked about kind of being a Midwest metal band. And, that's kind of cool. I mean, I know a lot of bands talk about their Bay Area and East Coast, West Coast roots. Tell us a little bit what it means for you and for Conquest, being a Midwest metal band.
Well, I guess you can view it more ways than one, but there's times you feel like you're at the armpit of America, and then it's times like you feel like it's cool because you have a different flavor than the other guys because they all basically, it's like anything else, man. When you're around a certain sound, a certain scene, and somebody starts prevailing, then a lot of people run that direction in sound. Conquest has kind of always had its own identity, and I'm cool with that. Of course, it's not as available as like an East Coast or West Coast scenario because when you're in those areas, everything's condensed, so you can bounce around much quicker to other cities and other places, where when you're in the Midwest, everything's spread out, so it makes it a lot harder to do such a thing. But with Paradox, man, since it's everywhere and Chip's working it and got everybody out there doing it, it's blowing up pretty good for us, and pretty stoked about that.
Yeah, well, I know that's priority A definitely for you, and I want to make sure that you get Paradox gets to stay in the sun here. So it is really an excellent album. I really enjoy it. But so I got to ask a question though. I mean,
sure.
So what the hell is it? I mean, you're like every flavor of metal there, which is awesome. So I'm saying it in a funny way, but you're like, what the hell are you guys? Tell the metal fans, what they can get out of a Conquest album, especially Paradox.
Well, Paradox to me is the most diverse Conquest record. We've done a lot of different records over the years, but this is the most diverse within one. I kind of compare it to, like, you ever been on a vacation, like where you walk into this smorgasbord of food, and it's everything you could possibly want. You got steak, chicken, lobster, you name it, it's all there. Free cocktails. Well, that's kind of how I view the record. We wanted to have everything on there humanly possible that we do and we do well. And so once we put it together and just started rounding off the edges, and that's what came out. And we don't like to be just a one style. For instance, I don't like records that much when you put it on and it goes from to the start to the end, and you can leave to go to the bathroom and come back and still not leave the same tempo or the same vibe or the same feel. That's not kind of what we're about. So that's why the diversity is there, I guess, is what I'm saying.
That's a great answer. And actually, I think especially towards the end of the record, some of the songs even, will change feel and mood, towards the end. I mean, is that something? Is that just how your writing has evolved? Is it I'm not sure where I'm going with that question, but you know what I mean? Like some of the songs even have like pretty big changes, like right in the middle.
Well, so yeah, so again, songs for me, writing songs for me, sometimes are an extension of my state of mind, or a mood that I happen to be in. So when you get into some of them songs, even though it might be like take a song like World of Hate, kind of very dramatic in the beginning, and then when you get into the middle of it, it's a little more slap punky, a little bit hard rock driven type thing. But you know, that was just me watching the news. You know what I mean? Kind of that deal. Then you jump over to Last Goodbye. So that was written about the passing of my father. So that gives you a whole other texture of that, which takes you into a very, you know, lack of a better way of putting it, solemn state of mind during the song, which makes you feel like, you know, a major transformation in my mindset anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, I appreciate that perspective. I didn't realize that in the song, so that definitely adds power to it. And actually, so I'm glad you took us in this direction. I want to ask about, like, what the song Babylon America. I'm not going to corner you and say, what's the song about? But you can kind of just give us an idea of, you know, where you're going with the song, both musically and lyrically.
Well, you know, here you go. Let's talk about that for a quick second, because Babylon America was a tune that none of us in the band necessarily looked at as going to be the song people talked about, but everybody talks about that song. So I'm excited from that perspective. Again, a different flavor. That was the front of that track was written during the very early days of COVID, when everything was going wacko and society was shutting down, and you know, you couldn't go get food or any of that kind of stuff. So sitting in my dining room playing my piano, that front piece and those lyrics kind of just came out on its own little, I don't know. It gave birth to itself without really thinking about it. It was just me doodling around on the keyboard and writing some words down, and the next thing you know, it turned into that. And went downstairs, you know, and kind of got into the middle piece going, need some more guitar. So then you put on an electric guitar, start crunching some hooks out, and bam, you know, that's pretty much how that came about. And again, a very deep song lyrically. It touches on a lot of different things what's inside there. When I don't want to get, you know, pick a side in politics, but it definitely has a I'm going to go with a straight up just an American concept wrapped around it. So, yeah. And Mike brings some killer work on the guitar. And, of course, Robbie here, all the bass melodies going on there. And then Lee just killed it on the drums with the strong back. You know, to me, if the rhythm of the song sucks, the rest of it don't matter how good the lyrics are or guitar playing is. You know what I mean? If the drums and the bass suck, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, nice. You know, you're kind of setting up my questions without even knowing it. But you know, so I definitely want to get into the band now. You know, I know you've been as we've established. You know, you're a veteran in this industry. So talk to me a little bit about your the Conquest bandmates. You know, talk about Mike Crook, you know, Rob and Lee. Tell me about what they bring to the band, and
sure,
just tell me about that.
It's the fun part. So, you know, being in a band, man, is like having 3 wives. You know, from that perspective. Other guys. So, you know, on Tuesday it might be this way, on Wednesday it might be that way. But one thing's for sure, when we all get together and work on music, it's amazing how much original music pours out of us. Again, I've never been a cover artist. I've always, since when I was picking up the guitar and playing guitar and I couldn't play, I was working on original music. And then, so you take Rob. Rob came around in the early days when I was a young kid. I knew him through school and all that kind of stuff, and then the scene, you know, the little scene around town. And when you're in high school, you know, everybody's got their little clique or whatever. But Rob played with me early back in those days, and then left for a long time, went off and played in the cover bands and all that, and came back about 13, 14 years ago. Prior to that, you had Mike in the band in 95. Mike was a fan of the band, and I knew he could play guitar, and he was over jamming with one of my buddies who had trying to put a project together. and Adrian, who was a guitar player at the time, had to bow out. So I do what I do. I went looking around, and for me, it's also about personality, not just ability, because sometimes ability changes personality if the personality isn't developed first.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? So
Sure.
Mike really developed into a stellar guitar player over the years, and it's almost easy when we go downstairs working on leads or harmony guitars or breaks. Since we both are pretty well versed in the guitar, it's pretty easy to do without going, oh, everything's easy, blah blah blah. I'm just saying, once we get the ideas, it kind of goes together pretty well.
Right.
Same thing with Rob. Rob's a verse bass player, man, and he comes in. He's got that groove background with his bass playing, and then the melodies are just so strong. And he's workable. You can talk to him. Hey, man, what about this? What about that? And he'll try it. You know what I mean? Where some guys just don't want to divert off of what they're what they're thinking, and that's not how you make good music. At least not in my opinion. Same thing with Lee. Lee came up, man. Lee's been in the band for a couple of years now. Although I've known him for 30 years, him playing around the scene and other established metal bands and that around the area. But I called him and told him, Tim had to leave the band due to personal things. So Lee jumped right in and did everything, in my opinion, up to par and then some. You know what I mean? So really cool. It was fun to make this record. Some of it took a while because we started it with Tim, and then COVID came in, and all that happened with Tim, where he had to leave the band, and just crazy times.
Yeah, well, for sure. But it's working. It's working. And no, I definitely want to hear. So, what about the other side of the coin? That's not the right way of putting it. But the other side of this is, of course, is live. And you guys have a long history and shared the stage with a lot of great bands. But let's touch on that. But first, let's talk about live in 2024. You've done some cool shows, and I see you have at least one coming up. Talk to me about I don't know. We'll talk about the shows you have coming up that people should go and see, and also what a Conquest live experience is like.
Well, for us, we kind of live to play on that stage from that perspective. We don't get to play as much as we'd like to. Right now, with the way the schedule's set up and the record coming out going into summer, summers are hard in the Midwest, are big time, and the cost of touring right now is through the roof. So
right.
We're kind of doing some one-offs here and there. Like you said, we got the Burning Witches show coming up, Diamond Music Hall out in St. Peters, Missouri. That's a little distance away from where we're at, but that's cool, and that'll be a good night. Play there probably a couple times a year in that venue, which is, like I said, it's a really good venue for hard rock and heavy metal. So looking forward to that. And then there's some things set up in the fall that'll be on the calendar. Pops Concert Club over in Sauget, Illinois. We'll be over there. I know those dates are locked in, just haven't been announced yet. I know there's some things in different parts of Illinois coming up that are locked in, like in some October dates. And then we're going to try to get on some other things as well as the record matures and people start learning about it more, thanks to people like you guys.
Oh, great. Well, I know. Let's again, as a guy who's been around this for a long time, I'm sure you've got some really. Tell me about some of your, your favorite, live concert memories. Some of those from some shows you've done throughout your whole career.
Sure, we've been really lucky since back in the early 2000s. We became a Jägermeister band, and that was a lot of fun because they were good to us and put us on a lot of cool stuff. We got to play with a lot of bands, so we hung out with a lot of different people. Typo Negative was one of my favorites for whatever. Not so much music. I liked the music, but they were just authentically different guys. You know what I mean? So that was cool. The Overkill guys are great. A lot of fun there. Played with Testament quite a few times. Another great thing. I'd probably say one of the cool highlights for us was, so we were playing out at a place, I don't know what it was called back in 2000, but it was the amphitheater in the area, right? in St. Louis area, and we played the Friday night with on the main stage with Rat, Warrant, and I'm not sure who the other guys were at the time, but we were done, and then we were backstage, and and here come the promoter back, said, "Hey, don't put your gear away." He goes, "Just keep it here, and you guys open the show tomorrow night. The band that's going to open is in lead singer's in jail." And I'm like, it doesn't get much luckier than that, because that next night was Queensryche, Rob Halford on the Resurrection, and Iron Maiden. You know what I mean? So that was super cool to have happen to us. Very cool.
Yeah, so rock and roll too, right? He's in jail.
So rock and roll, yeah. Because you were like, huh? Sure, we can do that. You know what I mean? Straight up rock and roll.
But, this is something I really respect about you guys. Like, think about all the bands you just mentioned. You're talking about Testament, Overkill, and I know in your bio you said you've been on the State of Slayer, but you're also talking about Rat and Warrant, and you guys fit. It's not like, you're sore thumb in any of those. So that's an awesome thing I think about you guys, that you've kind of fit in with, I mean, maybe not extreme metal, but, maybe like with all these different kind of shades of heavy metal, which is awesome.
Without being, the old term a poser. We're not, we're not, we're not Poison, and we're not Lamb of God. We're not, but we're everything in between, right? So if you pick a certain set of songs from the last 3 records, sure, we can go out and play a set in front of Slayer. Opening night 2004, St. Louis sold out before I even got the phone call that we were playing the gig. It was sold out, right? So yeah, we were a little concerned about being Slayered off the stage. I've seen that happen before. It didn't happen. So yay us, And then we got to do some Mayhem tours, like I said, 2 or 3 nights on that, and then it was just a lot of fun back in the day when music was a little bit more. I don't know. There was a little bit more of a camaraderie amongst the music, I think, back in the day than there is now. But what do I know?
Well, again, you're setting me off with these things. I wanted to ask, kind of, again, as a guy who's seen some decades go by in this industry, what does it mean? Everything, as you said, touring is expensive. Life is, bread is expensive. So what does it mean to be a serious musician in the world today? Like, what does that mean?
It's a different world. I'm going to put it in this terms. If you're still playing music in 2024 and you're not 18 or 25, you're probably doing it because you love music and the cool things that go with it. Not trying to. You're not buying Lamborghinis. You're not doing. Those days are gone. You might get 1 or 2 guys to break through, our bands to break through, but it's rare. Like tell me who you know today came out in the last 5 years that's got the bank of account of a Aerosmith.
Right. Yeah. Again, anybody. Right.
Right. And they're not going to, because that's not the way the industry's set up anymore. So once all these icons die off in the next 3 to 5 years, boy, the industry could suck. Because you're going to have some concerts, you're going to have some big concerts. Your Tools and those kind of bands, that era will prevail to an extent. But will it continue in the format of your Aerosmiths, your AC/DCs, your Motley Crues, and your all that stuff? Is that going to happen? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, right. That is something I think that is a topic of conversation across a lot of the heavy metal world, is when our giants all retire, or like you said, or die off. Like I have tickets to Iron Maiden this year, but how many more years does Iron Maiden have? So I think you're right. I think we're all waiting to kind of see that future. You guys, I know you're not in that age bracket, so you guys will be going around. I mean, you guys, what do you
not
think?
Right.
Right. So what are you looking at for the the decades ahead, or the years ahead? I know you're focusing right now, but what are you thinking about for the future?
Yeah, our immediate focus is this year, next year, and we'll take it from there. After this election gets over with, hopefully the economy, hopefully we clean this mess and stuff, and we get back to a where you can go out and travel. And like you mentioned earlier about bread, well, think about it. Back in the day, man, I can tell you there's a lot of nights where we bought loaves of bread and bologna. And where we're out running down the East Coast type thing, you know what I mean? And we were grown men, and that's why we ate, because it was doable and we could stomach it and we got through it. But now, is it any really cheaper? You know what I mean? So, I mean, how can you do that? And it's hard to go do that kind of stuff the older you get without some rewards. So, it's awkward. I can only imagine. You ever notice? Pick a band from 15 years ago that you thought was cool. I'm just going to throw a band out there, and I don't mean any disrespect to anybody, but take a band like Ice Earth, who I know those guys, Trevor, and all those guys. The drummer left after the second or third year. It's all about that mighty dollar. He went off to school, right?
Right.
And then the next guy comes in, and then the next guy leaves, and the next guy comes. So it's hard to do because the money is so little. The industry chewed it up and spit it out. That's what happened when the internet took over. A band that sold in 1985, if you sold 150,000 copies, you were a loser.
Mm-hmm.
You sold 150,000 copies now, they'd love you.
Yeah, no, but all that's really well said. I definitely think people need to be aware that it's not the same. I think some people still have that same perception, like, oh, you're in a rock band, so you ride around limos and you drink champagne every night.
Yeah, no. There's no wild parties. You're back there tuning your guitar, stretching, getting ready to go out there and do it, so that you can do it right. You know what I mean? And you want to sing good 3 nights in a row. Guess what? You're not up drinking all night, dehydrating your body. You're just not. You might have some cocktails, but you're not 3 sheets to the wind like when you're 25. You're just not.
All right. Well, I know we only got a couple more minutes. I want to get to one or two more questions, but I appreciate all the time. Hey, keep your fingers crossed that the recording worked. I've been taking notes, but so talk to me a little bit. You just talked about staying in shape, singing and whatnot. And I know you handle double duty of that. So who are some of the players and singers and players who really inspired you and who you tried to, maybe as like an up and coming player, tried to kind of learn from and emulate?
Sure. Well, I was originally I wasn't a vocalist. Originally I was a guitar player at heart, and I became a singer because of, in the 80s singers sucked. I mean, it was all ego driven. So, it was just, one day I decided, okay, Metallica can do this, I can do this, and that's pretty much where that all went. But growing up, man, I was Ronnie James Dio influenced me. I was a huge Priest fan. I mean, huge. So you take those singers, throw a little Bruce Dickinson in there, and a few other guys here and there. I'm a big Sabotage fan. I really, really like the melodies that come out of John Oliva. So those vocals definitely influenced, my approach, my thought, And then, like you said, I'm a guitar player at heart, so I still play guitar too. So,
yeah. And so what about on that end then? You mentioned Hetfield. Was he an inspirational guitar player, or other people like more Eddie Van Halen? Where did that come from?
Sure, Eddie Van Halen, big time. The era I grew up in. I was also a Richie Blackmore fan.
Right.
So you had Richie Blackmore. You had Edward Van Halen. I also, bands like Styx, the twin guitars, that stuff influenced me early on. But yeah, Priest, that just when that happened, and then Iron Maiden, boom, right in '81, it was all, that was everything at that point. So, yeah.
Nice.
Big influence on me.
Yeah, great. And that also, that explains, you mentioned Ronnie James Dio, then you mentioned Blackmore. That explained the Man on the Silver Mountain cover, that's a huge success.
Without a doubt, man. That was a great track. Always one of my favorite songs throughout my whole life. And, so we put it on a record.
Yeah. I encourage, if you're listening or reading, whatever, I encourage you to check out the whole album. But, if you're like, I need an intro, I need a gateway, I'm like, well, check out the Man on the Silver Mountain cover. That's a song and these guys kill it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I think Mike did a great job on it, and I think for me the breakdown of the lead break, if that would have been wrong, the rest of it would have been a moot point anyway. So those guys handled that real well, which was super cool.